there. Mandy Friedman here, licensed professional clinical counselor, clinically certified domestic violence counselor, clinically certified trauma professional level 2, the creator of SNAP, survivors of narcissistic and abusive personalities. We are back after a long break. My brother and I, Andrew, we're talking about Succession. It's been a while, but man, we're going to come back with probably the best episode of the season.
Yeah, Mandy, we're going to talk about season 4, episode 8 today, Logan's funeral. This episode's called Church and State, and so much happens that we decided to split this into a 2-part episode. On this one, we're going to talk about church, and on the next one, we're going to talk about state. Mandy, this episode starts with Roman practicing his speech as he watches the protests outside of ATN. Folks are very upset about the election, and they have a right to be. As I said, Roman's practicing his speech, and along with many quips, it's actually really good.
Roman wrote a really great speech, and it's really giving his father a lot of accolades in this sort of like glowing description of how successful he was and how powerful he was and how good he was at things. And he's doing it very confidently, and it sounds great. You're thinking, wow, Roman is really going to hit a home run here.
Yeah, confidence is the key word, I think, there, because it's very important to set up how confident he is to give this speech at the funeral. He says he wants to win the funeral, and then what ends up happening and what happens in the state part of this episode because of his confidence or lack thereof. We see Shiv plotting over the phone with Mattson, and we'll talk more about that on part 2. But Ken is riding to the funeral, and he gets a call from Rava.
So there's upheaval in New York and across the country due to the election and the outcome of the election, and people are taking to the streets. Rava is really concerned about their safety and would like to avoid putting the children in a traumatizing circumstance or potentially harmful circumstance. She does not want for them to be a part of the funeral because of the negative attention that's going on related to the funeral. If someone was going to do something, they might do it at the funeral because of the involvement of the family in what's going on. So her concerns are valid, and you can see around them the chaos and people, again, taking to the streets. You can see it happening. And she's being a good protective mom right now and saying, you know what, the kids do not need to be exposed to any of this. We're going to get them out of here. Well, Kendall does what narcissists do. He throws down. He blocks the car in. He says he's going to lay down in front of the car. He starts pounding on the window. He is really, really distressed and pissed off that Rava is doing this to him right now, because it's really about the show. It's really about him being there sitting with his kids at the funeral. And she's ruining that for him. It makes him look like he's a bad father. Where are the kids? Why aren't they there? People will be asking questions. He wants to show a unified front, the same way that his father has done at different times. For example, why is Greg around? Is Greg talented in any way, shape, or form? Does he have anything to offer the situation? Not really, but he's family, which means he's in. So he's not going to disclose and tell what goes on behind the scenes, right? Like, you can trust family somehow. And that's what Kendall's trying to recreate here. He's trying to show that we are together and we're providing this unified front type view. He's really upset, and we see how upset here in just a few minutes.
He does the things to the children that they are afraid the protesters will do. He's pounding on the windows. He's threatening to lay down on the ground. He's saying, I'm going to the court right now to get an injunction to keep you from leaving. He is such a hypocrite. It is outrageous. And Rava handles it great. She doesn't believe his BS, and she just leaves anyway.
Rava does a fantastic job managing Kendall the whole series. And this is an example of someone who has been taught how to speak to him. Notice how she uses the same phrases over and over again. She resists getting distracted by his antics, and she stays focused. And that's what you have to do. So Rava is a really great example of what to do, what not to do throughout the season. But this is one of those times. Audacious hypocrisy. Whenever you see that level of hypocrisy that you just commented on within Kendall and his behaviors, we know that there is a cluster B personality disorder in the mix when you see this level of hypocrisy. It's not just human being hypocrisy. We're all hypocrites to some degree. I'm saying audacious hypocrisy. It's brazen. It's so crazy that we don't even believe it's happening. It's that audacious that you're like, it can't even be true. It can't even be so. And that actually leads to something that's called institutional betrayal blindness, or betrayal blindness, where it's so incredible that you're not even willing to believe that it's happening, even though you're seeing it right in front of your face. So you're right. He's pounding on the doors. That's what's traumatizing the kids. Is the way dad is acting right now. Rava is trying to save them from these traumatic experiences. And here comes Kendall. She was right. It didn't even have to be the outside forces traumatizing them. Their dad's going to do that on his own.
Just like his dad did to him. We catch up with Tom and Greg briefly, okay? And basically, Tom is going to be out of this episode for most of it. They're talking about ATN's involvement in the election. We see a news story about them, and maybe they're in trouble or something. The kids ride to the funeral together, and they're talking about who's going to be at the funeral. Will the president-elect be there? Will Mattson, Carolyn has invited them all to the Caribbean, clear the air. And Shiv tells them that she's pregnant.
We see more disgusting antics from Roman as he is now turned on by the fact that his sister is pregnant. We know he's gross and sick, and we know why. We've met his mother. You know, Shiv isn't thinking it's funny. No one thinks it's funny. And he says to her, you know, I'm not going to stop this, right? Like, this is going to go on the whole time. In the meantime, Kendall is saying, can we please just not today? You know, just for today, can we have a truce? And they said funeral truce. And yes, let's just for today, let's just focus on today.
Yeah, Roman's response to her saying she's pregnant, he says, is it mine? Is it mine?
That's so funny.
Oh, it's absurd.
Another good point about Kendall here is that he's having his siblings stop fighting, but he's okay with attacking the car that his children are in.
Right.
You know, what sense does any of this make?
Protesters are running rampant, and Jess, his assistant, is kind of stuck on the street somewhere, and she's like, can you guys come pick me up? Because this is getting scary. And they do. Now, when they finally get to the funeral, Jess tries to schedule something with Kendall, and Kendall sees a meeting on the calendar. Now, Mandy, we've talked about narcissistic behavior a lot. This is like another fantastic example because he forces her to tell him something that she knows he doesn't want to hear, but then she has to do it. So she does it. And then he gets mad at her and yells at her for what he did.
Yep. Again, I mean, this is why we're doing this right now. This is why you and I are talking about this, and we have been over the course of time recording these episodes. This is an example of why I love the representation of narcissistic abuse so much. And this episode has so many examples, and this is just another one of them. How he craftily pulls that out of her and then punishes her for talking to him after he forces her to talk to him. Then he says that it's juvenile, that, you know, she's being stupid. And after he calls her juvenile, he's behaving like a child. He's the one that's acting like a 4-year-old throwing a temper tantrum right now while he's pointing the finger at her and calling her juvenile. Again, audacious hypocrisy. You can't even believe it's happening. Are you seriously acting like this and pointing the finger at me simultaneously? What?
Jess is telling him that she's going to quit too. And she even says to him, don't you think it's a good time for me to move on? Like, can't you see this from my point of view at all? And that's when he flips out. It's unbelievable.
He wants to know why. And this is interesting. When you're
Yes.
dealing with narcissistic people, they draw you into sort of a debate or explanation. They want to hear your explanation. Notice how Rava doesn't really offer a lot of explanation. She says, this is what we're doing, and this is what. This is what we're doing, and this is what. Right? She doesn't fall for the breadcrumbing and getting sucked into something. Jess, still, you can see she's learned her ways of managing Kendall. She just sort of, I'm sorry you feel that way. You know, you can tell she's afraid of him too. She looks really scared. They draw you into a dialogue because that's when they're at their best. Note he flips the tables, he pulls the rug out from under you, he launches an accusation, he says something that's wildly untrue, and then you think you're going to argue back and show your point, and you get sucked into something. It's better to just deliver the information. It's not a discussion. This is what's happening. And that's how you are less likely to get drawn into that bullshit.
We are all finally at the funeral. It is at a giant Catholic church, in New York City, because Logan was very religious and it's very important. All these priests everywhere and, chanting and all that stuff. There's beautiful music in the air. Caroline is there. Okay. And the children see Caroline and Shiv says, oh, it's her big day. Which is really funny because, but we have this interaction between Caroline and Shiv that is just outstanding. Tell us all about it, Mandy.
You see Shiv and Kendall kind of have a back and forth about, oh, mom's here. And Kendall is like, maybe we'll have a twofer. He implies maybe she'll drop dead of a broken heart or not having one. And then that's when Shiv says, it's her big day. Like, let's let her have her day. And boy, isn't it her big day. So she sees Shiv and they have an interaction that is yet another great example of narcissistic abuse, where there were no words spoken, and yet Shiv's mom was able to put her down as being a potential future mother, that she's with child, she's going to be a mom, and it's just it's like one of those deals where it's just a little bit of gestures, some tone, all they said was, oh. And I think Shiv said, something like this. There were no words. And yet that woman was able to take that moment and turn it into something shitty. It could have been a beautiful moment, but her mom's not going to let that happen. And she knew that already walking in. That's why she was so guarded. And she even says to her mom, I'm not giving you any more information because you weaponize the information.
She tells her mother, she tells her brothers, and instantly everyone else knows. We don't see them tell anybody, but everybody else knows all of a sudden. She interacts with Mattson. He knows all of a sudden. That news spread pretty quick. It was almost like everyone was in a group text. But this is wild. I did not notice this. You and I watched this episode together recently, and I had never noticed this, and I've watched this several times. When Carrie shows up, she's grieving, she's smiling, doing her goofy look. Caroline invites her to sit with all the women, all of Logan's women. And Mandy, they all have a few things in common, don't they?
They look a lot alike. Caroline says, it's water under the bridge at this point. Let's all be together. And I love how she's making a show of it and how gracious she is. It's showing her being like, I'm actually the queen of the queens. This is a strategy move to pull us together that makes her the boss in a way of the group. Well, she is the mother, of the three children. I think that was just, wow. I love that part where she pulls them all together. And something else to notice about Carrie. Carrie does do that nervous laughing thing that she was doing even when we first learned that Logan had passed away. But she's crying now. It was like she was able to cry. She was being accepted by these women as being one of them. And that gave her relationship with Logan, made it valid, made it real, made it exist. And it wasn't just in her head. And you can see her really being emotional at being one of them. And I think that was probably really affirming for her.
She's also crying because she didn't pre-grieve. like Roman. You know what I mean? Like he pre-grieved, and that's why he completely keeps it together here. Not a problem at all. We see the procession led by priests, you know, the holy men, to make this holy man and put him in the ground.
You mentioned the church and how beautiful. We are not Catholic, so we don't know what cathedral this is, but I'm sure it's the most famous cathedral in New York City. It's going to be the grandest one of them all. Unfortunately, we don't know much about it, so we can't name it. But Logan Roy is not going to have his funeral just anywhere.
As the procession goes by, we see Roman start to slip a little bit. There has been an argument a little bit about who's going to speak. Roman says he's going to speak. We knew that Shiv is going to speak. And Greg was put on Ewan duty. He is not to speak, but he gets up anyway. And he gets up to the front and he gives a speech. And I have the whole thing, and I'm going to read it to you. The first thing he does is he looks around and he says, what kind of people would stop a brother from speaking over a stock price? And that shuts everybody up. That puts everybody on notice for what's coming next. He begins. It's not for me to judge my brother. History will tell that story. I can just give a couple of instances about him. You probably all know we came across the first time during the war for our safety, but the engines of our ship let go and the rest of the convoy sailed on without us, leaving us adrift. They told us children that if we spoke or coughed or moved an inch, that the U-boats would catch the vibrations through the hull and we would all die in the drink right there in the hold. 3 nights and 2 days we stayed quiet, a 4-year-old and a 5.5-year-old speaking with our eyes. So there's a little sob story. And once we were over, our uncle, who, so to speak, was a character, well, they had a little money and they sent Logan away to a better school. And he hated it. He just hated it. He wasn't well. He was sick. And he mewed and cried. And in the end, he got out and he came home under his own steam. But when he got back, our little sister, she was a baby. She was there by then. He always believed that he brought home the polio with him, which took her. I don't even know if that's true. But our aunt and uncle certainly did nothing to disavow him of that notion. They let it lie with him. I loved him, I suppose. And I suppose some of you did too. In whatever way he would let us, and we could manage. But I can't help but say he has wrought some of the most terrible things. He was a man who has here and there drawn in the edges of the world, now and then darkened the skies a little, closed men's hearts, fed that dark flame in men, the hard, mean, hard, relenting flame that keeps their heart warm while another grows cold, the grain stashed while another goes hungry, and even has the temerity to tell that hard but funny joke about the man in the cold. You can get a little high, a little mighty when you're warm. Oh, yes, he gave away millions of his billions, but he was not a generous man. He was mean. He made but a mean estimation of the world, and he fed a certain kind of meagerness in men. Perhaps he had to because he had a meagerness about him, and maybe I do too about me. I don't know. I try. I don't know when, but sometime he decided not to try anymore. And it was a terrible shame. Godspeed, my brother, and God bless.
I mean, good grief. It's okay. Within this speech is an example of narcissistic abuse where the aunt and the uncle allow Logan to grow up believing that he killed his sister. Now, we know of another story where someone else is carrying around a weight of guilt, right? Kendall drove a car into the lake and killed someone, and Logan uses that as a tool to manipulate Kendall, to get Kendall on board. So you see how generational abuse works, right? So we're seeing narcissistic abuse. We're also seeing these generational patterns and what the kids learn and how it plays out in their lives, and then how they act towards other people, it starts with not Logan. It starts with what happened to Logan. They say traumatized people, right? Hurt people, hurt people. It's true that trauma rolls downhill and abuse rolls into future generations. So that story of how Logan came to be, and then furthermore, how he turned out. And Ewan isn't saying that he is genuinely a better person. He's actually saying, I'm kind of like Logan. It's just I've chosen to live my life a little differently, and I haven't gotten it right all the time. I'm a dick too, but at least I try. At least I know that this is my nature, and so I try to be different, is what I interpret what he's saying about himself. Remember Rhea, played by Holly Hunter?
Yes.
Okay, so we're going back. Another great example of weaponizing information. Okay, Marcia tells Rhea to toast to Rose in that scene that breaks the relationship between Rhea and Logan. That's the moment that he ditches Rhea. And she can tell when she raises a glass that she said the wrong thing, but she was fed that information by Marcia. And we didn't know what happened until just now when Ewan told us the truth. He let us know who Rose was and what happened to her and why Logan was so sensitive about that topic. It's the one thing that he has shame over, perhaps, and he doesn't even need to have the shame. And again, that's very accurate. Narcissism is a combination of two things: shame and grandiosity. The grandiosity is what covers up the shame, and sometimes it covers it up so much that it doesn't exist anymore. But there'll be some things that stick. If we find out what happened to Rose, we see what Logan's shame is all about. And it comes from something that was implanted by his aunt and uncle, by abusive people who let him think something, and he still believes that's real and still carries that with him throughout his entire life. That's how much that affected him. And that happened when he was a little kid. And again, it wasn't even true. And so if you're wondering why you have an extreme reaction to something, or there's something a dark thought that you have about yourself, I challenge you to examine whether it's even true or not, or even real. It might be something that you think about yourself that is not accurate. Often it'll be something like imposter syndrome. Like if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me, they wouldn't trust me, or they wouldn't think that I'm this big, powerful man, right? Like Logan does not want his weaknesses to be shown to the world. And to have Rhea say, and to Rose, at that toast was like the worst thing that she could have said.
Yeah.
But Marcia knew this, and that's what makes this so, again, accurate and amazing, weaponizing information to take Rhea down. And it worked.
Well, Rhea wasn't his type anyway, so
True.
her hair's not nearly dark enough. So
he would not have fit in that picture at the funeral at all, I don't think.
After Ewan's speech, it's Roman's turn to talk. And we saw earlier how confident he was in this deep voice. And he even says, I'm speaking about my father with this deep, confident voice. He says that out loud while he's looking in the mirror in the bathroom. And he loses it completely. His voice, he gets up there, he has these notes and they're falling all over the place. And he, instead of having this strong masculine voice, has this wimpy, puny voice. He looks at the casket. It is a closed casket, by the way, which I have a couple theories about that. One of the reasons that they did that was because they wanted to hide who died, so it wouldn't get leaked. Another reason why they did that is because Logan is vain and would have a closed casket if he didn't look like him, which he wouldn't look like him, right? But Roman sees the casket and he asks his, brother and sister there. They're trying to help him. He asks them, is he in there? And they say, yeah. And he says, can we get him out?
You see Roman become a little child. And about what age is he in those moments? And that's going to be the age he was when those wounds were initially inflicted. He is whimpering. He's kind of wailing in this high sounding cry, like a child. And then later on, we hear people making fun of that even.
It's a key moment for the character in his pain and his journey, or whatever you want to call it. But it's also a key moment for what happens going forward in the state part of all of this. Roman losing his confidence in front of everyone makes people lose confidence in him.
For Logan as well.
Yes.
Logan would have these moments where he would kind of think, well, Roman might do pretty well. But then Roman would present in this way. He would be confident. He would be he'd turn into that little child in front of his dad, and then his dad would lose confidence in him. You see how that works? He can't be confident in front of his father because his father terrifies him and makes him afraid. So he just responds to his father's demeanor and the fact that Logan has abused him and traumatized him. But then when Logan smells that on him, he interprets that as weakness, even though he created it himself. We think he might stand up there and actually nail it. But the second he sees that Logan is in the coffin, he has a hard time recognizing that his father is dead. He almost feels like his father is in there and trapped and still alive. He cannot swallow that information and integrate it into his perceptions that his dad is gone. He's been in denial big time. He's been all about, like you said, who's going to win the funeral. Mm-hmm. And you can't be successful and you can't embrace your best qualities when you're surrounded by the people who have harmed you most.
He also just got schooled on the mic by Ewan. And he lost all confidence in his speaking ability there too, because again, he's trying to win the funeral and Ewan just maybe won the funeral. So there's only one person who can spin this like nobody else. And that's the king of spin himself, Kendall, who comes up and he's got some notes and he does the opposite of what Roman does. Instead of looking at the notes and trying to read them, he goes, don't need these, and spins this tyrant of a human and his terrible deeds into greatness and a captain of industry and a man who doesn't just create money, a man who creates life.
He calls his dad a brute. A brute is someone who still has worth in a way, that their brutishness serves a purpose. Them being heartless or non-compassionate, that might be a soldier, right? It might be somebody that will fight for the tribe. It might be somebody that would hunt and kill for the tribe. So a brute, or we call brute force, right? He says that he was a brute, but he was also a force that would hurt. And it did hurt. When he decided to turn that on you, it would hurt. But also he could turn that force on the other team or on the other side and use it for what we're trying to achieve. But we got to get on board with this brute and just be okay with his brutishness. It's a way to make it all okay. But he does say that money is life, essentially, right? And that money is what makes the world happen. It's what makes life happen. And therefore, Logan, with this massive force, brutish force that he made life. He says he made my siblings and I. He tried to humanize him in that moment, that he made them. No, he didn't. Those women that gave birth, the two women that gave birth to them, they gave birth, and then some other woman raised them. Someone else raised these kids. He didn't do anything. Another thing he says about his dad is that he was comfortable with this world. And he knew this world and he lived in it. It was a bit of word salad there that came together nicely for him. Mm-hmm. Narcissists have this way of throwing words around. And Kendall does a lot of the word salad stuff. So does Connor. But Kendall has a way, like I said, of making it seem overall coherent. And he makes a good point that his dad was this brute force that made things happen. Sometimes it hurt. Actually, a lot of times it did hurt. But hey, he was our brute.
He also is extremely charming. And when he ends his speech, he says, my dad is all these things. And my God, I hope I have that in me. They all want to be Logan. They're all trying to be Logan. And they're literally saying it. We have one more person that's going to speak, and that's Shiv. And Shiv gives a fantastic perspective. She talks about his office and how he would be in there doing important things and he would only come out to yell at them. He wouldn't let you in the office. She was using it as a metaphor. It's a metaphor for him, but when he let you in, the light was warm. And that is a textbook explanation of narcissistic abuse.
Right. It's deprivation and reward, mostly deprivation, but the reward is amazing. First of all, you're deprived, so anything seems amazing. I say it's like they toss you a bone, but it's like a filet mignon. They're really not giving you what you need, but you need it so bad. You're starving, and so it's going to fill you up for a second. She really uses a great example of what kids would do to have the attention of their parents, and that includes getting negative attention. That I'm never going to get positive attention. So here, let me get some negative attention. I know this will get some attention if we sit out here and make him mad. There's such a need for kids to be with their parents or to have the love and affection, attention of their parents. It's intrinsic within us. It's in our spinal column. It's part of survival. It's part of the nature and nurture of who we are. So she's playing outside his door as a kid and just knowing how important he is and just waiting to get yelled at is the only way that you're going to have any contact with him. But another thing she said was that he was hard on women, and so basically she's saying my relationship with him was not the same as my brother's because I'm a girl. So he would have been different with me. She sees how he treats the women around him. And she can tell that she's not as important, that she's not respected as much, and that he has more hopefulness in the boys than he does in her. And she's constantly trying to show him that she is enough and that she is smart and that she could do these things and that he could depend on her. She says that he was a world after she just got done saying that that warmth, when it's on you, it's like the sun. When the sun shone on her, that makes him her world. Mm-hmm. And that's the thing. You orbit them. You live your life around them, right? And it's all about when you get to have your moment in the sun. And is it going to be today? And maybe I'll be good enough today. And maybe he'll like me today. I'll just play outside his door until he notices me.
Well, Mandy, that is the conclusion of the funeral ceremony. But before we end this and move on to, the state portion in our next episode, I think it's important that we talk about each one of the kids one by one and see how they handled this themselves. We haven't talked about him yet, but he is there. Connor's there with Willa, and he wanted to give a speech, and it was very long. And I remember Shiv said something like, well, your speech is going to open us up to some liabilities. So, we're going to say no. And unlike you, and he listened and sat there. But how is Connor handling this?
Connor seems to not be as codependent as the other kids. He didn't have the exposure to Logan that the other three kids did. I believe that he grew up separately and possibly shunned for a lot of his life. And that at some point he was, allowed to be part of things. But you can see that was a good thing for him. Even though he is the way he is, which is super fucked up. He's a selfish asshole and he's grandiose. Oh my God, is he grandiose? He wants to be the president. Like he really thinks that that's something that he should do when he has no business being the president. Of course, nowadays, any old person can just do that, I guess. But you see how he is able to separate himself from that need to have the approval of his dad. He can walk away from it a little bit easier than the rest of the kids can. There was one point when his dad hurt his feelings. They were on the yacht and, he was soliciting his dad for money for his campaign. And Logan said some real mean shit to him. Like, you want to talk? Okay, let's talk. Here's what I think. and said some real mean stuff about it. Like you're an embarrassment basically. And don't even think about it. And just go crawl back under the rock, that you were under. And he did tell his dad that hurt his feelings and it affected him. And he is affected by things, but somehow, and he has Willa, that helps, right? That kind of wound, when you have at least someone, it helps with the wound because you think, oh, at least she loves me or at least she stays with me, right? But he somehow is able to kind of put it down and walk away and see himself as a separate entity outside of his father. Still not great. I mean, let's be honest, it's still pathological, how the whole narcissistic system works there. But compared to the other three, he seems to be a little more stable than the other three kids.
Well, next, let's talk about Roman, who maybe has the most out of control reaction to everything that's going on here. How's Roman handling this, Mandy?
Well, we mentioned that Connor is the oldest, right? Well, Roman's the youngest, right?
Yeah.
He's the youngest, which means that he would have been a baby around these other kids who have already been abused. So remember, it rolls down. He would have been brutally abused, I would say, by the time he enters the family. And mom was nowhere to be found. Maybe with Kendall, Caroline might have been a little more motherly for him, being her first. But by the time she has that third baby, she's already got it down as to how she's not going to be a mom. You can see that Roman is emotionally wounded around those toddler years, when you want the bosom of your mother, when you want your mommy to feed you, when your sustenance and warmth and comfort is mommy figure, right? And then after mommy, there's sister. So he would have not gotten it from mom, and then sought it from Shiv perhaps at some point. And so that's been some sick thing with him. So the whole series, we've seen him have a really fucked up relationship with women and sex. And, he's really drawn to Marsha. He was really drawn to Jerry, and, they had the dick pic thing. So he has, a real sick attraction to motherly figures, including his own sister. And he's not able to have intimacy or be vulnerable in any way to have meaningful relationships with anybody else that would be willing to have a relationship with him. There was that woman, Tabby, that was with him for a little while. He was a total asshole to her. And she was probably the best thing that came along for him in a long time. So Roman is developmentally stunted at the age at which he was wounded. They put him in a cage. They called it the dog pound. He might have been 3 years old, 4 years old when that happened. And so this is what he turns into when he's triggered, when he's upset about something. When we activate that wound, he's whimpering like a toddler.
We talked about Roman and Connor. Want to talk about Shiv next. Man, it's interesting because not only is Shiv going through this, but she's also pregnant with the next generation of fuck ups, So it's like, that is important.
Her trauma response is more of a fawning response. You can see this come out around her dad, but it also comes out a little bit with her brothers. And then with other men, she has a very sort of hard exterior. Tom is the closest thing. And then Shiv knows how to handle Lucas because he's awkward and sick and gross around women. And she's been around the wolf pack. Remember that episode? Yeah. Mo Lester.
Yeah.
Right. So she was around that kind of creepy, gross behavior, and she knows how to deal with it. So she has no problem manipulating Lucas. Around her brothers, she wants them to respect her, and she's in competition with them all the time. But that's Logan who instilled that competitiveness among them, pitting them against each other. Divide and conquer is one way that he used to manipulate and control them. They could never team up against him, right? He's been really good at keeping them from being successful at that. They don't have confidence in themselves that they could actually achieve it. They never quite get it over the finish line. Fawning is a trauma response that often women will have that response, which is you make friends with the abuser, or you try to get them to like you and you're just extra super nice. You are complimentary. You try to be of service, and that gives you some value in that power structure. It also is a way of saying, don't hurt me, I'm not a threat. It's, submissive. What can I do for you? As fawning. And so you see her do that with her dad. She does get angry with him at times, and she's one that leads the charge often with like a no contact situation. She was really in on the no contact. And when they did that, they seemed to be doing well. But I think probably her wounds would have taken place in the, adolescent years, possibly, or, prior pre-adolescent, maybe around 12, 13 years old is when she starts to recognize more so like, oh, I'm a woman. And dad doesn't like women. Where is my worth and value coming from as a woman in this environment? So that would be how Shiv navigates now in her adult life. She wants to show that she can do it on her own if she needs to, but she'll also rely and fawn on a man to help get her where she wants to go, because that's what those have been her only options in life.
Lastly, we'll talk about Kendall and how he's handling this. And I just can't help but to think, Kendall's going to try to use this to his advantage. He always tries to use everything to his advantage to some extent.
Kendall would have been the oldest, right? And when I say oldest, I don't mean Connor, because
Connor doesn't count. Sorry.
Connor doesn't count. I'm sorry. I didn't say that. It's how the show was,
I said
presented it. But, Kendall would have gotten more confidence as the oldest. He would have been like, for the periods of time, he might have been the golden child, right? So you can see how he has this strange confidence about himself, where he's going to conquer the world. He's going to take his dad down. He's able to confront powerful people and have conversations with them. Roman can't do any of that stuff. What is different between Roman, Shiv, and Kendall? It's important to remember that narcissistic people, as they abuse you, they purposefully treat you differently, even, that they're not going to use the same tactics. They're trying to get something different out of the situation. So those kids, all three, had very different experiences, even though they had the same abusive situation. They have a lot in common, but there's other things that they don't have in common. And I think for Kendall, there would have been times that Logan did feel that he would have been the successor, and that Kendall would have believed that about himself, being the oldest.
That's how the show starts, with that exact situation and the rug getting pulled out from underneath him, So
you can see that Shiv's trauma response of fawning and wanting to please, some outside person, then she kind of swallows a lot of stuff, and she winds up being depressive. Now, Kendall has bipolar disorder, where he's manic and then he's depressive. He also has more suicidal ideation, where you're wondering, is he going to jump off the thing? We see him kind of looking at the water a lot, and he's floating in the pool unconscious, right? So he has something that cycles more quickly, and it's really tricky for him, because he has that confidence. He's a narcissist for sure, so he has that personality disorder, but at the same time, the mood disorder on top of it makes him unable to achieve his goals. He can't quite get where he wants to go, because he gets tripped up by his substance use disorder, his suicidal ideation, or bipolar episode. One covers up the other. The substance use disorder is there to cover up the bipolar disorder and the suicidal ideation. It all works really well together. And how they presented Kendall's character, it's very accurate with all of his different features that go on. He's a complicated person, but when it comes down to it, he is about himself, and he has more of that going for him than the other two kids that are younger than him, I feel. And that probably would have been because Logan shone his sunshine on him more than the other kids.
Man, that's a fantastic analysis, Mandy. We haven't talked about Tom at all. And the reason is because we're going to talk about him next episode. He's not at the funeral because he's busy working, because there's a shit show going on in the world and he's got to cover it on ATN. So we're going to talk more about him next. We're going to talk about all the machinations going on before and after the funeral, and what affects the reactions to trauma that the kids have affect the world of Succession and what goes on forward.
And thank you for watching. For listening. Bye-bye.